All right, there we go. All right, good morning. This is Andy Woldridge. I am joined here today with Timora Batarao. She is a mortgage broker with Motto Mortgage. And today we're going to be covering the topics of VA loans. So May is Military Appreciation Month. And so with that in mind, I wanted to give out some really valuable information about the benefits that you as a veteran or active duty military member have with the VA loan product. So Timora, she's an expert in this industry. She's also a military spouse like myself. And so we know the ins and outs from the spouse and military perspective, as well as the mortgage and realtor professional perspective that we can shed some light on for you guys. So first and foremost, Timora, I'd love just to know a little bit more about you, your company that you work for, and VA loans and how you kind of got into the industry.
Okay. Well, my name is Timora Batarao. I was active duty service member in the military. I was in the Army for 5 years, where I met my husband. We decided to let him be the one to keep moving forward once we had our first son. So I got out and got into the reserves. I was a reservist for 3 years and then went into IT. After we got stationed in Korea and came back, I got into the mortgage industry. And since then, I've just been doing my best to serve military families, people like me, and, anyone else who's interested in home ownership and benefiting from it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I know that my personal story of being a military spouse is when we first moved to Florida, we lived in an RV. So we had never bought a house. Before that, it was, living on base and going all over the place. And I didn't know anything about buying a home. So we did buy our first home with a VA mortgage, but I had no idea what I was doing. And since then, I really dedicated myself to making myself more knowledgeable to share it with others that are also looking to purchase a home, and sharing the benefits of what it looks like to use a VA loan. So a couple questions I had about VA loans that we can talk about is, first and foremost, what is a VA loan? What do you consider VA loan, and who is eligible to use it?
Okay, so a lot of people, in general, we call it a VA loan, but it's actually an insurance policy that's paid by the Veterans Administration as mortgage insurance paid by VA. The same people that purchase conventional loans, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, purchase VA loans. So the benefit of it is that instead of a buyer home, first time home buyer needing to go through, hey Jeff, sorry.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
You're good.
I didn't know.
Take two.
Okay,
So
VA.
what is a VA loan? Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So essentially, a VA loan is a guarantee that's provided by the Veterans Administration. It's similar to mortgage insurance, except that the VA is the one that pays for it. Conventional loans, generally, if you don't want to pay mortgage insurance, you need to pay 20% down. Well, the VA covers 25%, and they guarantee 25% of that loan amount without requiring the veteran to come up with that. There is a funding fee that supports the program, but if you're a veteran that has 10% disability or more, or you're active duty and you've received a Purple Heart, you don't have to pay that funding fee. There's so much to the program. It's really a benefit to veterans and military active duty service members. It's really, and others who serve in government. It's a great program.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's a VA loan on a home that is assumable, the person that's assuming the loan doesn't have to be a veteran, correct?
That's right. The benefit to them being a veteran, though, is that if a veteran assumes that property, the original owner who was a veteran is able to take their entitlement with them.
Okay.
If a civilian who doesn't have access to the VA loan benefit purchases at home using the assumability portion of that, the original veteran's eligibility stays tied to that home.
Okay.
So it's good and not so good.
It's situation dependent. Like I guess if as an active duty, if you were selling your home here in the States because you're PCSing overseas and you wanted to rent for your time there, then it wouldn't matter, I guess, if the entitlement stayed with the home because you wouldn't be buying another one. But yeah, it comes down to, I guess, person to person dependent.
Yes. And you don't lose all of your entitlement doing that. I mean, if a portion of your entitlement is in that, being that you can use your entitlement more than once, there's a possibility that you have enough entitlement to, purchase another home without a down payment too.
Sure, sure. That's good. Um, so in terms of property requirements for a VA loan, I know most people think it's only for buying a single family residential home. Is there any other properties that you can use a VA loan for?
You can buy up to a 4 unit property using a VA loan. I mean, that's house hacking. Like,
101.
yeah.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I mean, you intend to live in one, and you rent the other three out. That's if you can do that, that is a great way to grow net worth through real estate.
That is fantastic. Yeah, I wish we would have done that when we first bought our home. Um, the other, I guess, requirement, right, is if you're going to have a VA loan, it has to be your primary residence for 1 year at least.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. You need to have the intent to live in that property for at least a year. The VA is not, it's not a criminal justice based organization. They're not going to come after you with, a lawsuit if you have orders and you have to leave. Things happen. You're in the military, especially for those that are active duty. If you do wind up being in a situation where you need to leave before that year is up, it's a matter of having an explanation for why that happened.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Um, I know that in the real estate profession, there's a lot of misinformation out there about VA loans and how they're a headache. And, as a seller, you should not entertain VA loans because you have all this red tape to go through and blah, 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 blah. So me as an agent, when I first started out, also had that impression just from others in the industry that had shared that with me. And I made my own mistakes of encouraging my sellers not to use VA loans. Um, I'm more knowledgeable now. If I could go back, I would encourage my sellers to absolutely entertain VA loan offers. But at that point in my career, I didn't know any better. So I want to make sure that we're sharing the right information from a real estate professional perspective, that VA loans are actually a really good loan product to entertain for a seller. So another question I have with that is, I know there's red tape that comes along with the VA loan in terms of just some standards and things that the VA has to go through to make sure that it's a good home for that veteran, which is important, right? So if there are things that come up that need to be overcome through that process, like an appraisal coming back low, how can we circumvent that as a real estate professional and still help get that veteran in the home?
Okay, so the main thing to consider is that just like with any other loan product, there are requirements that the VA as well as conventional FHA, other programs, USDA, have credit, income, and assets.
Right.
If the buyer has achieved those requirements, then they're eligible to purchase a home. The benefit to the VA versus those others is that with an appraisal process, if the appraisal comes back low, you're going to get that information up front before the appraiser puts the report in. So you have some initial recourse to reach out to the appraiser, the real estate agent, usually the listing agent will, because they're the ones that came up with the valuation of the property in the first place. They'll reach out and provide comps before that report is done. If for some reason the appraiser, they won't budge, they feel that their evaluation of the property and their assessment of the value is what it is, there's other recourse that you have when it comes to reaching out to the VA directly. The lender can reach out to the RLC, which is the Regional Loan Center, and do a reconsideration of value, which is essentially the same process that you went through with the appraiser, but now it's directly with the VA. They'll evaluate it at that point. And if that doesn't work, so you have multiple options, whereas, with other loan types, you're not going to get that. The appraiser says what it is, and that is what it is. So you have, reconsideration of value and then a risk-based analysis. So there's the opportunities and the options are far and wide greater with the VA loan. And though, obviously, the VA's appraisal process is going to be a little bit different from the other programs, and it's because it's for the benefit of a veteran. They want to make sure that that property is valued the way it should be, that they're not going to be purchasing a home that they, are going to be upside down in.
Right.
They want to make sure that it's safe, secure, and sound. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So with those in mind, here's a cool story that Timora and I actually just worked through together about a VA buyer and a new build. So I work with a builder who was listing 4 new houses that she was building. One appraisal, there were 3 that were VA loans, 1 conventional. The 2 other that were VA loans came back above value, above contract price. The third VA loan, that was actually the first one done, came back $60,000 under contract price. And we're like, there's no way. I don't understand how you can be that far off as an appraiser, but I provided the comps. We helped them move forward in that process with the Tidewater, the first initial review. Didn't budge. They're like, nope, that's what the value of the house is. So I have my own theories about what happened with that appraiser, but to help the buyer and to help the builder, the next step was then to go and do that reconsideration of value. So the lender at that point then reached out to the regional office, submitted a letter of hardship on behalf of the veteran, asking them to reconsider the value of the home and then raise that appraised value. They came back and said no. So then we went to that third step of going above and beyond that regional office again with the comps, with the hardship letters. At that point, the 2 other appraisals had come back on the other homes that were right next door, and they were above contract price, same priced house. So we sent those appraisals. We sent all the evidence possible, right, to that highest command for them to make a change. And they're like, I don't know how this happened or why this happened with this appraiser. I'm sorry to see that this is this current situation, but no problem. Boom. Raised it $60,000 overnight. Buyer got in the house. Everything's good to go. It took longer, right? The closing process had to get extended by a few weeks. But at the end of the day, that VA buyer, he had selected the finishes of the house. Like he was ready to move in. Like that was his home at that point. He was really excited. He didn't want to go buy another house. Like he wanted that house and he knew it was valued appropriately, right? So we did all of the work that we could to help get him in front of the right person to then get that value back as it should be and get him in the home at the end of the day. So pretty cool from both ends because, works out for the builder. She got the price she wanted for the house, and the buyer also got the house that he wanted with all the finishes that he had picked out through the building process. So that just goes to show, like in real time and as a story, that you can use all those different avenues to still get your buyer in the house and still protect your seller of the appropriate value of the home. A couple more questions about VA loans. So just in the current economy that we're in, have you seen there's a more popular mortgage loan products that people are pursuing, or VA is pretty popular right now?
VA is, it's always popular as far as I'm concerned, just because military service members, they're on the move. I'm always going to say, if you're able to purchase a home, do it. I mean, I lived in barracks, I lived in military housing, I spent my BAH, and over the years, I saw how much money I spent that I could have benefited from.
Absolutely.
But the VA loan is, it's a product that we continue to use, especially for military service members. Most of the time, they're going to use that benefit because it allows them to be able to purchase a home without having to bring money down. Oftentimes they can get seller concessions and come into a house with maybe just spending the amount that it costs to do their earnest money.
Yeah.
And that's outstanding. The other products we're, seeing a lot of are, FHA loans, just because for affordability, it's gotten a little bit tighter with interest rates going up. Mm-hmm. However, I'm always going to say, if you have the ability to use your VA loan benefit, do so. Even if you've used it before, even if you've used all your entitlement, you're still going to have better credit underwriting standards. You're still going to get a better interest rate usually because the government programs have lower rates than conventional. So yeah.
That's awesome. And so for homeownership as a veteran, right, especially in the state of Florida, there's a lot of benefits to it. For property taxes, right? If you're 100% disabled, you don't have to pay property taxes. Yeah. But you have to own a home in order not to have to pay the property taxes, right? What else is there benefits for veterans and just homeownership in general?
In general, it's a way, like I always say, you can benefit from the fact that you have a roof that you control.
Yep.
If you decide that you want to move, you can, use that property to use it as a rental property. You can leverage that property to move to your next home. Mm-hmm. It gives you so many more options than, essentially just waiting to find out what someone else's life plan has for them. And then, you kind of run with it. If they decide they want to increase rents, if they decide they want to sell, you're subject to whatever their, plans are.
Yeah.
Gives yourself a little bit more room.
A little bit more control as well.
Yeah. And, when you're active duty, it's kind of a big deal because you don't have a lot of control over a lot of things.
Take it where you can get it. So how fast can a VA loan close? If all the paperwork's provided and the borrower does their job of giving you all the information that they need, what does the closing process look like?
It can be really fast, especially, for those that are active duty, the documentation requirements are pretty low. And compared, to a self-employed
Yeah.
person that has,
Yeah.
it gets complicated that way. But I mean, for active duty service member, they have their LES, their W-2s, their, bank statements. It's for documentation, it's really not as complicated as some might think it is. The underwriting process is super fast because in order to qualify, you have to make sure that you're able to validate that information. Right. Well, validating that documentation is not difficult either. So usually the underwriting turn time for a VA loan, once you send all that documentation is, it's like 3 days. What takes the most time is actually the appraisal process because you have to assign the appraiser. The appraiser's got to decide when they're going to go out. They need to do the report and return that back in for the underwriter to review it. So essentially, with everything done, you could get a VA loan done from contract to close in 12 to 15 days.
Which is amazing. I mean, most conventional loans, you can't do that. So that's pretty awesome. Well, this has been a lot of great information. I appreciate your time, Timora. If you guys have any more questions, want to learn more about the VA loan process or just buying a house in general, you can reach out to Timora for your pre-qualification or pre-approvals, talk through what loan products work best for you, figure out how to use your VA loan. And if you're looking for houses, you can talk to me. Until next time, thanks again. I really appreciate it, Timora.
Thank you, Eddie.
Bye.